Dobar ден, почитувани гледачи. Денешнава емисија на македонско издание е 356 по ред, а ова е 17-та година на емитување на оваа програма. Денеска е 16 мај 2015 и се надеваме дека повторно ќе го задржиме вашето внимание покрај телевизиските екрани или пред вашите компјутери. Секоја втора сабота во ова исто време и на овие исти канали на Роджерс ТВ гостуваме во вашите домови со најновите информации за поважните настани од комунава во Торонто, како и со македонска музика за сите вкусови. Емисијава ја започнуваме со нашата редовна порака. За да набавите возило со врвен квалитет по поволни финансиски услови, јавете се кај Дени на телефон 905-881-3900 и прашајте за спектакуларниот попуст за месец мај, во кој сите оние кои ќе финансираат или ќе земат на лизинг одредени врсти на возила ќе добијат додатни поволности. Освен Денис Пасоевиќ, кој е генерален менеджер, можете да ги побарате Бане Јокиќ, финансиски менеджер, и Рада Вазиќ, која е бизнис менеджер. Нова локација каде можете да ги добиете овие сите поволности е во Хај Парк на 3275 Dundas Street West во Торонто со телефон 416-762-7537. Денешнава емисија ја започнуваме со прилогот што го снимивме на 3 мај годинава во Walter Stewart Library во Ист Јорк, а во организација на Канадското македонско историско друштво. Имено по иницијатива на Вирџинија Еванс, поранешен председател на друштвото и долгогодишен член на управата на истото, се одржа презентирање на македонската емиграција со поднаслов «Жените и нивните достигнувања». Меѓу 6 учеснички беа Наташа Денковски, продуцентот на оваа ваша програма јас, Победа Пискачева, Сандра Данојловиќ, Марија Лазарова Манчева, Вера Бела Зелковска, Зое Кристо и специјалната гостинка од Монтреал Александра Настеска. Пред присутните беше представена и Вера Белчевска, првиот председател жена на управата при црквата Свети Климент Охридски во Торонто. Во продолжение проследете што забележавме од овој настан.
I would like to welcome and thank you to all of you for coming today on such a beautiful Sunday afternoon. This is our special lecture about the Macedonian immigration in Canada, which started last year in honor of the late Dr. Lilian Petrov, and I hope this will continue as an annual event and become a tradition in the years to come. Lillian's book, Sojourns, is about the Macedonian immigration in Canada, which I suggest that every Macedonian family should have. And today is exactly what we are going to talk about. You will be hearing a little more of an explanation from our coordinator, Virginia Evans, and our speakers.
Tony has mentioned that this is our second celebration of Macedonian immigration. You know, I thought that after honoring Lilian Petrov, I thought it would be appropriate to continue this event to honor immigrant women and their accomplishments. Most of the women who immigrated to Canada in the early days of the 20th century came as brides, or eventual brides for the men who settled here. Women that emigrated in the latter part of the 20th and early 21st century were educated as a rule and came to Canada with a different perspective. Women can be so much more than wives, mothers, and the hub of a family, and we wanted to feature and celebrate these women and their separate accomplishments from those that have to do with their husband and their family. We look for women from the various regions of Macedonia, as for example, the Republic, Aegean Part, Pirinska, Mala Prespa, but we were only able to find women from the Republic and the Aegean part of Macedonia, and they were able to accept our invitation. We started to research the community to find outstanding women who, as immigrants to Canada, have achieved prominence in the arts, sports, business, nonprofit. We also wanted to choose people that had achieved this on their own without financial assistance from family or pursued degrees in areas not even related to any previous education in Macedonia. Of course, we wanted them to have made a difference to either the Canadian or Macedonian community with their achievements. This was a very tall order, but many were qualified. There were not just a dozen or so, but dozens in the Macedonian community. It was difficult to make a choice. And so I enlisted another member of the Canadian Macedonian Historical Society to assist me in the selection, who was Despina Bursi, who's over there taking money. There was a lot of discussion by the time we made our final selection, and please remember that these women today represent the many that are part of the Macedonian Canadian community who are equally qualified.
I was born and raised in Skopje. So as you can see, I still miss the mountains here. And I lived almost 3 decades there. So I finished my education, I had my life, my friends, my family, everybody was there. So this is a little bit who I was before I came to Canada. I was good at sports. I'm the national champion in Macedonia, and I still hold the record in air pistol. As well, I was the member of the team. I traveled, and I had another hobby. I was modeling, so it was good. And kind of people say the life was good.
I came to Canada with my husband on April 26, 1990, which was 25 years ago. There was no need for us to immigrate anywhere. We had everything there, in Skopje, Macedonia. Great successful careers, our families, and all our friends from childhood, the high schools, and universities that we attended. The decision to come to Canada was actually mine, since my husband at that time, when we started dating, was already in process of getting a visa for Belgium. He was a professional fashion photographer with a degree in metallurgical engineering. He had his own marketing studio and was planning to continue his career in Europe. My husband was fluent in French, but I did not speak any of the languages that were spoken in Belgium. And since I spoke English, I convinced him that Canada would be a better place for us, just in case we decided to stay there. I really believed that we were going to visit Canada for only 4 months, and after that we would come back to our life we had in Macedonia. I was so wrong.
I actually feel quite honored to be part of this group of phenomenal women who are sharing these amazing, beautiful stories, very touching and poignant stories. And with that, I want to mention that really, in fact, my career is quite diverse, but at the core, I'm a storyteller. So I'll try and maybe sort of tell you a little bit of my story of how I came to be here in Canada, in Toronto. I was born in Macedonia, in Skopje. That's my hometown. And I immigrated to Canada in 1984 at the age of 10 with my parents and my sister. And subsequently, I was, of course, schooled here, and my trajectory is very much of that of an artist. So I went to a high school for the arts. I was a painter and a photographer. And soon thereafter, I went to York University and to get my Bachelor of Fine Arts in Film, which catapulted my career in filmmaking. I was a filmmaker for about 10 years, and as Ginny mentioned to you, I was very much interested in these kinds of personal stories, personal testimonies, community voices, narratives that you don't usually hear, that you don't have a chance, that are perhaps maybe hidden and marginalized. I was very much into sort of exposing the underdog. And so, because my immigrant experience, of course, formed me, was very much kind of a formative experience, I decided to make a documentary, my first documentary, Portrait of a Street, the Soul and Spirit of College.
I am the owner of the clothing brand Lazar Couture. I am very pleased and honored to be standing here today, be among the 6 other big names, and share my professional journey with you all. To be recognized, to be supported by the native community is priceless. So in this very beginning, I would like to say a big thank you to Mrs. Virginia Evans and her team for all their effort, love, and work in supporting and organizing such an event by involving our Macedonian community in following Macedonians in their professional achievements, cherish them, supporting them, and even promoting them. I always admired and noticed well-dressed women since my very early age. When I say early, I mean really early, 6, 7. And by ladies, I mean my friends' moms, my family members, even my friends' older sisters. I always knew what they wear, what they like. Later, when I was a teenager, I stylized and dressed almost all my friends every time we went out for a party. I always knew I want to study fashion, but my father never supported that idea. So in the end, I ended up studying mechanical engineering as my father wanted me, and simply following his plans in working with him one day in his family business that was growing at that time and required, of course, technical engineering knowledge. I graduated, I met my husband there at the university, we got married shortly, and of course, together we worked at my father's company for a good 6 years.
За сите ваши потреби да купите ново или користено возило под поволни финансиски услови и технички да их одржувате дени или рада од Nissan Willowdale ќе ви помогнат на наш јазик 905-881-3900.
First of all, thank you very much for the invitation, Virginia. This is an honor. I feel quite less accomplished than most women here, given my age and my, onset to my career. So I'm very, very pleased, and thank you again for the invitation. So I'm going to start a little bit differently. I'll start with the story of a young girl who always wanted to be in the front seat, most often having the wheel in her hand. I was always that person that wanted to pursue whatever interest it was without any hesitation. My sister would sometimes try to stop me, such as preventing me from eating whatever I was trying to eat, but I would prevail most of the time. I was quite fierce, probably very annoying, and probably a bit rebellious to my parents, but I think that's probably what makes my character and what has helped me accomplish some of the things I have in my life. I will tell you a bit about my early days. I was born and raised in Skopje, Macedonia. I had lived there until I was age 14. My school family was my extended family, and then we had a very large additional family. So in my life, those were the parameters. I didn't really know what else existed outside of Aerodrome, the cats that I would take home and bathe, and the dogs, the stray dogs that I would feed with our most prized deli meats at home. So for me, that was life. It was my little community. And our house in Mavrovo, which is a place that whenever I think about nostalgia, this is the place to think of. So as the tensions began to escalate in 2000-2001 in Macedonia, the conflict didn't seem to have been contained just in Kosovo. And my family decided to take a very courageous step and immigrate. And my journey is actually much longer than Skopje to Toronto. It involved various different stops on the way. So we first immigrated to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where my mother pursued her PhD. We took 2 suitcases each, some English vocabulary under our belt, and took a one-way flight to Milwaukee, seeing how things will develop. And little did we know that we would ever end up in Canada.
For the Panis family, always move when I think of this. 1947 was a very good year. August the 7th, my widowed mother, my grandparents, Baba Zoya and Zedomitre, my 2 brothers, and myself flew from Athens, Greece to Canada. I was 8 years old. The time we arrived as immigrants from the village of Vumbil near Kossuth in the Aegean region of Macedonia. My uncles had always said that they would send for us the day that Canada was open for new immigrants. Finally, that day arrived. My grandparents were so excited to see their sons and my uncles. The family was together again. I will forever be grateful for my grandparents that they had the foresight to send their sons to Canada when it was easier to do so. I am also grateful for my uncles for taking us all when we were finally allowed to arrive. We were glad to be out of the war zone in Vumbil. We lived in fear that we would not make it out alive. Running for shelter whenever the bombing was too close was a frequent occurrence. This went on for weeks and weeks. Our hopes were lifted each time that we were thinking that our uncles were in Canada. We hoped that we would soon be with them and away from this terrifying situation. We were the lucky ones. We escaped the terrible war and we were reunited with our families. The war and its horrors would last a lifetime for those people that were left behind. A few weeks after we arrived and settling in, I was told that I would be going to school at the beginning of September. I would have to have a change of name from Zoika to Joyce, to change my clothes, get a new haircut, and this would allow me to fit in with the Canadians. My family did this to make things easier for me. Well, to an 8-year-old, easier it was not. I sat in the classroom day in and day out wondering how I was ever going to survive. I did not know a word of English, and back then there wasn't English as a second language classes for immigrants. Until I learned the language, I had only my own thoughts, and at times wished that I was back in Vumbil. Maybe the war zone would be better than feeling like an alien in this foreign country. I was growing up and I had plans. I wanted to be a success. But just what is successful? The great UCLA coach, John Wooden, defined success. The peace of mind attained in knowing you've made the effort to do the best of which you're capable. Like Wooden, I always believe that if I can make that effort to do the best, to try and improve the situation, that was success.
One of my passions has been gender equality for many, many years. So to be part of an event where we're celebrating Macedonian women achievements is really an honor. And especially to be sharing the stage with women like the ones that were up here already. So, as Ginny said, I'm Macedonian. I was also born and raised, mostly raised in Skopje. I just to get an idea, how many people here were actually born in Macedonia? By a raise of hands. Okay. And how many are born somewhere else but are Macedonian? Okay. It's really good to have that mixture because we all have different experiences, so I hope I can speak to both. So since the topic of the event is about Macedonian women immigration stories, and it's about success, I will speak to you about what I define, about experiences that I had that I define for success, as successful for myself. So before I begin, let me tell you a few small stories from my childhood that actually propelled me propelled me forward and were early indicators that I was going to immigrate and live somewhere else. One of them was when I was about 8 years old. I had organized about 10 other 8, 9-year-olds to come together and to put on a play in the park closest to where we lived, and we did all the makeup, we did all the costumes, we pulled out stuff from our mother's closets, and we put on Romeo and Juliet. I was the makeup artist, I was Juliet, and I did all the marketing, so we invited, and we got an audience of about 30 people, which was really successful because we had no resources. Our marketing was very artisanal, let's just say. So that was my first sort of getting my feet wet into initiating stuff. Now the next one that happened was when the crisis in Macedonia started, United Nations started working with some of the schools in Skopje, and one of them was Nova, where I studied English language. And I was through that school, I was invited to be on a panel to talk about life of girls and women in Macedonia, and to talk about the situation, what it means to be a girl and a woman in a country that's going through this transition that was not very happy times for a lot of us.
We just finished listening to these presenters, the event that you organized with Canadian Macedonian Historical Society, Successful Women in Macedonian Community. What do you think, what are your impressions after the event?
I am very thrilled that we have a lot of people here, and they seem to have been enjoying themselves, and I think that they will have become very impressed at the quality, the accomplishments that women are achieving on their own. They're no longer just wives and mothers and what have you. They have businesses. They're in nonprofit. They are in banks. They're in fashion. They're in all kinds of other areas. And I am so proud of the fact that they are capable. I mean, a woman also that came from the Gatska Macedonia that was able to open a store on Yorkville. I mean, this is quite amazing. But you know what? They are just a small number of all the Macedonian women that are out there doing all of those kind of things.
So probably because there's so many successful women here in Toronto, in Canada, your job was very difficult.
It was difficult because I had someone else that I had to consult in order to reduce the numbers, because we couldn't have more than 5 or 6 people speak, and then we had Alexandra come from Montreal to speak because of what she has also accomplished. It was very difficult because there were lots of women that I could have chosen, that Despina and I could have chosen. So yeah, that's what I said, that, you know, these 6 women represent scads and dozens of very successful Macedonian women who are immigrants.
Thank you very much, and big success in your other endeavors.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Pobeda.
За сите ваши потреби да купите ново или користено возило под поволни финансиски услови и технички да их одржувате дени или рада од Nissan Willowdale ќе ви помогнат на нашиот јазик 905-881-3900.
И во денешнава емисија имаме неколку информации. За сите ваши прослави и одбележувања користите ги банкет-салите во црквата Свети Климент Охридски во Торонто. За информации и резервации јавете се на 416-421-7451. 73-тиот поред голф турнир Macedonian Open во организација на канадското македонско место ќе се одржи на 8 јули годинава. Подгответе се за уште едно спортско такмичење и дружење кое оваа година го одбележува своето 73 годишно постоење. За професионално и поволно дизајнирање на веб-сајтови побарајте ги TJ Hosting на 647 547 3061. Почитувани гледачи, тоа е се што подготвивме за оваа емисија на македонско издание. До нашата наредна средба за 2 недели, кога повторно ќе се видиме со нова програма, ви благодарам за вашето ценето внимание, пријатно и довидување.